You know that sound? The crinkle of the paper on the exam table every time you shift your weight? It's the most annoying sound in the world. It's designed to make you feel like a piece of meat at the deli counter. I'd been sitting in exam room 3 for 45 minutes. My mom was in the waiting room, probably reading a 3-year-old magazine. I told her I was fine. I told her it was just dizzy spells. You know, low iron, dehydration, normal teenage stuff. I'm 17. I'm supposed to be invincible. But when Dr. Aris finally walked in, he didn't look like a guy who was about to tell me to drink more Gatorade. He looked rattled. He was holding a thick manila folder, not a digital tablet like usual, an actual old-school paper file. He was gripping it so hard the edges were bent. He didn't make eye contact. He walked straight to the counter, opened the file, and stared at it. I saw his Adam's apple bob as he swallowed. "So, Doc," I joked, trying to break the tension. "Am I dying, or do I just need a cheeseburger?" He didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. He slammed the folder shut. It was loud, like a gunshot in that small room. He turned to me and his face was pale. "I need to speak with your mother, Sarah. Right now." "Why?" I asked, sitting up. The paper crinkled loudly. "I'm almost 18. You can talk to me. It's protocol," he muttered. But he was lying. I could tell. He wasn't following protocol. He was panicking. He walked to the door and waved my mom in. She came in looking worried, clutching her purse like a shield. "What is it?" she asked. "Is she okay?" Dr. Aris didn't answer immediately. He walked over to the metal filing cabinet in the corner of the room. He took a key from his pocket, unlocked the top drawer, and shoved my folder inside. Then he locked it again and put the key back in his pocket. That was weird. Doctors don't lock away current patient files. They leave them on the desk. He turned to my mom and walked her to the far corner, near the sink. He thought I couldn't hear. He thought the hum of the air conditioner would drown him out. But I have really good ears. He leaned in close to her and whispered, "The genetic markers are back. It's exactly what we feared. The sequence is active." My mom gasped. She put a hand over her mouth. "Does she know?" she whispered back. And that's when Dr. Aris said the words that made the room spin. He hissed, "No, she must not know. If she finds out what she really is, the experiment is compromised. We have to suppress the symptoms. Today." Experiment? Compromised? I sat there, frozen. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought they could see it. Dr. Aris turned back to me, pasting a fake smile on his face. "Sarah, good news. It's just a severe vitamin deficiency. We're going to give you a shot to help with the dizziness, and you'll be good as new. A shot to suppress the symptoms." My mom nodded, playing along. "See, honey? Nothing to worry about." But her hands were shaking. I looked at the doctor, then at my mom, then at that locked metal drawer. "Okay," I lied. "Thanks, Doc." I rolled up my sleeve. I let him give me the injection. I let them think I was the clueless teenager they wanted me to be. But as the needle went in, I wasn't thinking about vitamins. I was staring at that drawer. My test results were in there. The truth about what I really am was in there. And I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't leaving this building until I broke into that cabinet. You know the best way to get a hovering mother out of your face? Tell her you're gonna vomit. It works every time. As soon as Dr. Aris pulled that needle out of my arm, I grabbed my stomach. I put on the performance of a lifetime. I groaned, doubled over, and said I felt like the room was spinning. My mom went into instant panic mode. She looked at Dr. Aris, terrified. "Is that normal? Is she having a reaction?" Dr. Aris looked annoyed, but he checked my pulse. "It's likely just a drop in blood sugar from the anxiety," he said, dismissing it. "She needs water and fresh air." "I'll bring the car around," my mom said, grabbing her keys. "I'll pull right up to the front entrance so she doesn't have to walk far." She bolted out of the room. That was one down. Dr. Aris lingered for a second. He was washing his hands at the sink, watching me in the mirror. He had eyes like a hawk. He knew something was off, but he had a waiting room full of patients. "Sit tight, Sarah," he said, drying his hands with a paper towel. "I'm going to print out your discharge papers. Don't move." "I won't," I mumbled, keeping my head down on my knees. "Just don't let me throw up on the floor." He walked out. The heavy door clicked shut behind him. I waited 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. I sprang off that exam table like it was on fire. The adrenaline dump was insane. My hands were shaking and my heart was doing somersaults in my chest. I had maybe 2 minutes before he came back with the paperwork, maybe less. I ran to the metal filing cabinet. I pulled on the handle. Locked. Obviously. I looked around the room. I didn't have a key, and I didn't have time to pick a lock like I was in some spy movie. I needed a brute force solution. There was a stainless steel tray on the counter. Cotton balls, tongue depressors, and a pair of heavy-duty trauma shears. The kind used to cut through denim and seatbelts. I grabbed the shears. I jammed the clothes blades into the gap between the drawer and the frame, right next to the lock mechanism. I cranked it. The metal groaned. It was a cheap office supply cabinet, not a bank vault. I put my whole body weight into it, ignoring the pain in my shoulder. Come on, come on. I heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy ones. Dr. Eris. Panic spiked in my chest. I gritted my teeth and gave one final, desperate shove. Pop. The cheap metal latch bent, and the drawer sprang open about an inch. I didn't waste a second. I jammed my fingers in, scraping my knuckles, and yanked the drawer open. It was empty. No, wait. Not empty. There was a false bottom. A metal divider. I pulled it forward. And there it was. My file. Sarah Jenkins. Confidential. I grabbed it. I didn't have time to read it. I could hear Dr. Eris talking to a nurse right outside the door. He was reaching for the handle. I shoved the thick folder down the back of my jeans, pulling my oversized hoodie down to cover the bulge. The cold paper against my skin felt like a block of ice. I kicked the drawer shut. I threw the shears back onto the tray. I barely made it back to the exam table when the door opened. Dr. Arias walked in, holding a receipt. He looked at me. Then he looked at the counter. Then he looked at the cabinet. The metal around the lock was slightly bent, a tiny scratch. If he looked closely, he'd see it. My heart stopped. Feeling better? He asked, his eyes narrowing. A little, I lied, forcing my voice to sound weak. Think I just need that fresh air. He stared at me for a long, uncomfortable moment. He was analyzing me. He was looking for a tell. Right, he said slowly. Your mother is outside. I slid off the table. I walked past him, terrified that the crinkle of the folder in my pants would give me away. Every step felt like walking on a minefield. I made it to the lobby. My mom was idling the SUV at the curb. I climbed into the passenger seat, sweating bullets. Did you get the water? I asked, buckling my seatbelt over the hidden file. Yes, honey, she said, putting the car in gear. Let's get you home and into bed. I looked out the window as we pulled away. Dr. Eris was standing in the window of his office, watching us leave. He was on the phone, and he looked furious. He knew. He had to know. I pressed my back against the seat, feeling the sharp corner of the file digging into my spine. Mom thought she was taking me home to rest. She didn't know I was bringing the compromised experiment right into her living room. Tonight, I wasn't sleeping. Tonight, I was finding out why I'm worth hiding. You know that silence in a car after a fight? The kind where the air conditioning sounds like a jet engine because nobody is saying a word? That's what the ride home felt like. My mother is a terrible liar. She always has been. When she's hiding something, she hums. Just this low, tuneless buzzing under her breath. It's a nervous tick. And for the entire 20-minute drive from Dr. Eris's office to our driveway, she didn't stop humming. I sat there, clutching my stomach, pretending to be the sick daughter. But every time she hit a bump, that stolen medical file dug into my lower back. It was a physical reminder that the woman sitting next to me, the woman who taught me how to tie my shoes, who nursed me through the chickenpox, was keeping a secret that could destroy us. We pulled into the driveway. It's a nice house. 2 stories, brick, manicured lawn. The kind of place where nothing bad is supposed to happen. But looking at it through the windshield, it didn't look like home anymore. It looked like a cage. I'll make you some soup, Mom said, turning off the engine. She finally stopped humming. She looked at me, and for a second I saw real fear in her eyes. Not fear for me, fear of me. You just go upstairs and rest. I'll bring it up on a tray. Thanks, Mom, I said. My voice sounded hollow. I walked up the stairs, one hand on the banister, one hand holding the file in place under my sweatshirt. I felt her watching me from the bottom of the stairs, checking, assessing. As soon as I got into my room, I didn't just close the door. I locked it, and then I wedged a chair under the handle. Paranoia? Maybe. But after what I heard in that office, I wasn't taking chances. I pulled the file out of my pants. It was warm from my body heat and bent in the middle. I threw it onto my bed and just stared at it. Sarah Jenkins, confidential. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely turn the cover page. I expected to see blood test results, maybe a cancer diagnosis. You know, the tragic stuff you see on TV dramas. But the first page wasn't a lab report. It was a billing statement. It was a list of monthly payments from a company called Ethelgard Biologics. $5,000 a month. Every month. Since the year I was born. I flipped the page. And that's when the floor dropped out from under me. It was a medication log. But not for the vitamins Dr. Eris had been giving me since I was 12. Date, June 12th. Dosage, 50 millimole. Compound, MN suppressant. Purpose, inhibition of cognitive awakening. Memory dampening. Memory dampening? I thought about all those times I felt foggy. All those days I couldn't remember where I put my keys. Or weeks where I felt like I was walking through dream. They told me it was anemia. They told me I was just spacey. They were drugging me. But the worst part wasn't the drugs. It was the signature at the bottom of the authorization form. It wasn't just Dr. Eris's signature. Right next to it, in neat cursive handwriting, the same handwriting that signed my report cards and my birthday checks, was my mother's name, Eleanor Jenkins. She didn't just know. She authorized it. I felt the nausea rise up, and this time, I wasn't acting. I ran to my attached bathroom and barely made it to the toilet. I sat on the cold tile floor, gasping for air. My mother was downstairs making soup. She was probably humming in the kitchen, cutting carrots, acting like everything was normal. Meanwhile, she's been signing off on chemical lobotomies for her own daughter for 17 years. Why? What is so wrong with me that my own mother would agree to erase my mind? I heard a knock at the bedroom door. Sarah? Mom's voice came through the wood. Soft, caring. Honey, I have your soup. Unlock the door. I looked at the file on the bed. If she came in, if she saw it, game over. Just a minute, I choked out. I'm changing. I scrambled up. I needed to hide this. Not just under the mattress. That's the first place she'd look. I looked around the room. The vent, the closet. Then I saw it. The old dollhouse in the corner. The one I played with when I was 5. It had a false bottom in the attic where I used to hide candy. I shoved the file inside the tiny wooden house and snapped the roof back on. I took a deep breath. I unlocked the door and moved the chair. When I opened it, my mom was standing there with a tray, chicken noodle soup, crackers, and a small paper cup with 2 blue pills in it. Dr. Eris called, she said, smiling that tight, fake smile. He said you forgot to take your evening supplement. It will help you sleep. I looked at the pills. Memory dampeners. I looked at my mother. Thanks, Mom, I said. I took the cup. I'm going to take them. Or at least I'm going to pretend to. Because if I want to find out the truth about Ethelgard Biologics, I need to be awake. And I have a feeling the nightmares are just getting started. You know the worst part about betrayal? It's not the big lies. It's the little ones. It's the way my mother sat on the edge of my bed, blew on a spoonful of chicken soup, and looked at me with those soft, worried eyes, waiting for me to swallow the poison. Take them, sweetie, she urged, nodding at the paper cup. Doctor, Eris said you need to sleep it off. I looked at the 2 blue pills. Memory dampeners. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to stop. If I hesitated, she'd know. If I asked what they were, she'd know. So I did what I had to do. I played the game. I tossed the pills into my mouth. I took a big gulp of water. I tilted my head back and swallowed hard, making sure my throat moved so she could see it. The oldest trick in the book. Tongue pressed flat against the roof of the mouth. Pills tucked safely into the cheek pouch. I learned that from a movie when I was 10. I never thought I'd use it on my own mother. She smiled. Good girl, she whispered. She kissed my forehead. Her lips felt cold. I'll let you rest. Keep the door unlocked in case you need me, okay? Okay, Mom, I mumbled, trying not to slur my words like the pills were already kicking in. She walked out, closing the door until it was just a crack open. I listened to her footsteps fade down the hallway. I heard her go into her own bedroom and turn on the TV. I waited 10 seconds. Then I scrambled out of bed, ran to the potted fern in the corner, and spat the blue pills into the dirt. I buried them deep under the soil with my thumb. I wiped my mouth. I felt sick. Not physically, but spiritually. That woman downstairs. I used to tell her everything. I used to cry in her lap when boys broke my heart. And she has been chemically erasing me since I was a toddler. I went back to the dollhouse. I popped the roof off and grabbed the file. I sat on the floor, using the light from the street lamp outside so I wouldn't have to turn on my lamp and alert her. I skipped the billing statements. I skipped the medication logs. I went straight to the back of the folder. There was a section stapled shut with a red tag. Origin report, St. Mary's Hospital. St. Mary's? That's the old hospital downtown. The one that burned down in the late 90s. I ripped the staples out. It was an incident report. Dated November 14th, the day I was born. Patient 0, unidentified female infant. Location, neonatal ICU, Ward 4. Incident type, mass casualty event. My breath caught in my throat. Mass casualty. I read on. The text was dry, clinical, which made it even more terrifying. Description. At 03 hours, the infant, subject 89, exhibited a sudden spike in bioelectrical output. 3 nurses in the immediate vicinity suffered immediate cardiac arrest. Electronic equipment within a 50-foot radius was permanently disabled. The hospital's backup generator failed. I stared at the paper. Cardiac arrest. I didn't have an infection. I didn't have a vitamin deficiency. According to this report, the day I was born, I killed 3 people just by crying. There was a photo attached to the report. It was a grainy black and white security camera still. It showed a nursery. Cribs lined up, but in the center, there was a blur of light, distorted, white-hot, and standing over the crib, looking at the light, was a man in a lab coat. I recognized the profile, the nose, the way he stood. It was Dr. Eris. He wasn't just my family doctor. He was there. He was at the hospital the night I was born. He saw what I did. I flipped the page. There was a handwritten note at the bottom, signed by him. The subject is too dangerous to release, but too valuable to destroy. We will implement the containment protocol immediately. Place her with Agent Jenkins. Initiate memory suppression. She must never remember the hospital. I dropped the file. I looked at my hands. They looked normal, pale, shaking, a little chipped nail polish. But under the skin, what am I? Suddenly, a flash of pain hit my head, like a spike being driven into my temple. Reading the words, St. Mary's Hospital, it triggered something, a crack in the dam. I smelled smoke, acrid, burning plastic. I heard the sound of glass shattering, and I heard a sound, not a baby crying, but a hum, a low electric hum that vibrated in my teeth. The drugs, the pills I just spat out, they were wearing off. The wall was coming down. I'm remembering. And if I'm remembering, that means I'm dangerous again. I looked at the door. It was cracked open. If my mom comes in here, if she sees me remembering, am I going to hurt her? Or is she going to finish what Dr. Eris started 17 years ago? I need to get out of this house. I need to go to where it started. I need to go to the ruins of St. Mary's. You know that feeling when you walk across a carpet in wool socks and touch a doorknob? That snap of static? Imagine that, but multiplied by 1,000, constantly buzzing under your skin. That's what it felt like as I stood in the middle of my bedroom. The air around me felt heavy, charged. The hair on my arms was standing straight up. I looked at the digital clock on my nightstand. 11:42 p.m. The house was quiet. My mother, Agent Jenkins, had finally turned off the TV. I could hear the floorboards settle down the hall as she walked to her room. I grabbed my backpack from the closet. I didn't pack clothes. I didn't pack my makeup bag. I packed the essentials for a fugitive, a flashlight, my savings jar, about $200 in 10s and 20s, a pocket knife I found in my dad's old toolbox in the garage, and of course, the file. I shoved the manila folder against the back of the pack, right up against my spine. I moved to the window. My room is on the 2nd floor, but there's an old oak tree right outside. I've climbed it a dozen times when I forgot my keys. I reached for the window latch. It's metal, old brass. As soon as my fingertip brushed against it, snap. A spark of blue light, thick as a matchstick, jumped from my nail to the metal. It wasn't just static. It left a scorch mark on the brass. I yanked my hand back, shaking it. It didn't hurt. It felt good, like stretching a muscle that's been cramped for 17 years. But it was loud. The crack echoed in the silence of the room like a pistol shot. I froze. I held my breath. Down the hall, a door creaked open. "Sarah?" Mom's voice, sleepy but alert. "Did something fall?" I couldn't speak. If I spoke, she'd hear the tremble in my voice. If she came in and saw the scorch mark, she'd know the memory dampeners weren't working. I heard her footsteps, soft slippers on the carpet, coming closer. I dived into bed, pulling the duvet up to my chin. I shoved the backpack under the sheets with me. I closed my eyes and forced my breathing to slow down. In, out, in, out. The doorknob turned. The door pushed open. I felt the beam of light from the hallway cut across the room. I felt her presence standing in the doorway. She was listening. She was checking for the hum. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from screaming. The electricity inside me was building up. I could feel it buzzing in my chest, wanting to get out. If she touched me, if she came over to tuck me in, I might electrocute her. "Please, Mom, go away. Please." She stood there for what felt like an hour. Finally, she sighed. "Just the house settling," she whispered to herself. She closed the door. I waited until I heard her bedroom door click shut. Then I waited 10 more minutes. I got up. I wrapped my hand in my thickest sweatshirt sleeve before I touched the window latch again. This time, no spark. I slid the window open. The night air hit my face. It smelled like rain and asphalt. I climbed out onto the limb of the oak tree. I dropped to the grass, landing in a crouch. I looked back at the house. My window was dark. My mother was sleeping upstairs, dreaming whatever dreams secret agents dream. Probably dreaming that the asset was safe and sound, sedated in her pink bedroom. I wanted to hate her. I really did. She lied to me every single day of my life. She drugged me. She reported on me. But looking at that house, the place where I learned to walk, where I had my first sleepover, where we put up the Christmas tree every year, it broke my heart, because none of it was real. It was a set, a habitat, and I was just the animal in the zoo. I turned my back on the house. I walked down the driveway, past the SUV that took me to Dr. Eris this morning. I couldn't take the car. They'd track it. I walked to the neighbor's house. Mr. Henderson leaves his son's mountain bike leaning against the garage. It's rusted. The chain squeaks, but it moves. I threw my leg over the seat. St. Mary's Hospital is 5 miles away, on the edge of the city. It's been a ruin for 17 years. A burnt-out shell where kids go to spray paint graffiti and drink cheap beer. But tonight, it's not a ruin. It's a crime scene, and I'm the only witness who remembers what happened. I pushed off the curb. The tires hummed against the pavement. As I pedaled away from the suburbs, away from the streetlights and the manicured lawns, I felt the static in my hands growing stronger. The streetlights overhead flickered as I passed underneath them, buzzing, dimming, reacting to me. Dr. Eris said I killed the power grid when I was born. Well, Doc, you better hope the backup generators are working tonight, because I'm coming home. 5 miles on a rusted mountain bike doesn't sound like a marathon, but when your heart is racing fast enough to break a rib, and your veins are literally buzzing with electricity, it feels like the Tour de France. I rode past the suburbs, past the strip malls with their dark parking lots, past the highway underpass where the homeless guys sleep. As I got closer to the industrial district, the air changed. It stopped smelling like rain and cut grass. It started smelling like sulfur and wet concrete. And the lights? God, the lights. I wasn't just flickering them anymore. I was blowing them out. Every time I passed a street lamp, I'd hear a high-pitched whine, followed by a loud pop, glass raining down on the pavement behind me. I was a rolling blackout. I left a trail of darkness 3 miles long. If anyone was watching, if any traffic cameras were recording, I was basically drawing a giant arrow pointing right to where I was going. But I couldn't stop it. The closer I got to St. Mary's, the more my skin felt tight, like a balloon about to burst. I turned the final corner onto River Road. And there it was, St. Mary's Hospital. You know how some buildings just look evil? Not haunted house evil, but real-world evil. Cold, heavy. It was a massive concrete block, 12 stories high. The windows were all blown out from the fire back in the 90s, leaving these jagged black holes that looked like empty eye sockets. The brickwork was scorched black. It looked like the skeleton of a giant that died screaming. I ditched the bike in a patch of tall weeds. I didn't bother hiding it. If I didn't make it out of here tonight, A stolen bike was the least of my problems. I crept toward the perimeter. I expected a chain-link fence. Maybe some no trespassing signs covered in graffiti. Standard abandoned building stuff. But that's not what I found. The fence was new, 12 feet high, razor wire coiled at the top like shiny metal snakes, and every 10 feet, there was a yellow sign. Danger. High voltage. Authorized personnel only. Authorized personnel? For a ruin? I crouched behind a concrete barrier, staring at the fence. I could hear the hum coming from it. It was live. Probably enough juice to fry a deer, or a teenage girl. A normal person would turn around. A normal person would say, "Okay, clearly this isn't just an old ruin, and clearly I shouldn't be here." But I wasn't normal. And that hum? It wasn't scaring me. It was singing to me. I stood up. I walked right up to the fence. I reached out my hand. My fingers were trembling, but not from fear. It was hunger. As soon as my skin touched the metal mesh, the world went white. I expected pain. I braced for the shock, but it didn't hurt. It felt like drinking ice water on a hot day. I felt the energy rush out of the fence and into my arm. It traveled up my shoulder, into my chest, and settled right in the center of my heart. The warning lights on the fence flickered and died. The hum stopped. I had drained it. I just ate a few thousand volts like it was a midnight snack. I looked at my hand. The veins in my wrist were glowing. Not blue, but bright, incandescent white. I grabbed the dead fence with both hands and pulled. The metal groaned. I ripped a hole in the chain link wide enough to crawl through. I stepped onto the hospital grounds. The asphalt was cracked, with weeds growing waist-high. I looked up at the main entrance. The glass doors were gone, boarded up with plywood. But above the door, carved into the stone archway, were the words, "St. Mary's Hospital, a place of healing." Yeah, right. I pulled the flashlight out of my backpack, but I didn't turn it on. I didn't need to. The glow coming from my own hands was bright enough to light the way. I walked toward the dark, gaping mouth of the building. The file said I was in Ward 4, the neonatal ICU. That would be on the 4th floor. I'm going up. And if there are any ghosts in there, well, they better be afraid of me. You know what a time capsule smells like? It doesn't smell like nostalgia. It smells like wet drywall, asbestos, and pigeon droppings. I squeezed through the gap in the plywood boards and stepped into the lobby of St. Mary's. The silence was heavy. Not the peaceful silence of a library, but the suffocating silence of a grave. My footsteps crunched on broken glass and fallen ceiling tiles. I held up my hand. The white glow from my veins illuminated the room like a lantern. It was definitely a hospital. The reception desk was still there, covered in a layer of dust an inch thick. There was a calendar hanging on the wall behind it. The paper was yellow and curled, but I could still read the date. November 1998, the month I was born, the month this place died. I walked over to the desk. There were papers scattered everywhere, frozen in chaos. Admission forms, insurance claims, sticky notes. It looked like everyone just stood up and ran. I saw a coffee mug sitting next to an old beige computer monitor. The coffee inside had evaporated 20 years ago, leaving just a black ring of sludge at the bottom. It was creepy. It was like walking into the Titanic. I bypassed the elevators. The doors were pried open, revealing empty black shafts that smelled like rust. I wasn't trusting my luck with those. I found the stairwell, emergency exit. I started climbing. My legs burned, but the electricity in my blood was acting like a stimulant. I wasn't tired. I felt wired. Every time my hand brushed the metal railing, sparks showered down the stairs like glitter. 1st floor, radiology. 2nd floor, surgery. 3rd floor, oncology. I paused on the landing of the 3rd floor. I heard a noise, a scuttling sound. Rats? Or something else? I held my breath, listening. The building groaned, settling in the wind. Just rats. I told myself it was just rats. I kept climbing. 4th floor, neonatal intensive care unit. The door to the ward wasn't like the others. It was heavy steel, painted a cheerful pastel yellow that was now peeling and gray. There was a small window in the door, reinforced with wire mesh. I looked through. Darkness. I pushed the bar. The door shrieked, metal grinding against rusted metal. It was loud enough to wake the dead. I winced, waiting for a security guard or a ghost to jump out. Nothing happened. I stepped inside. The air here was different. It didn't smell like rot. It smelled burnt, ozone, like a thunderstorm that happened indoors. I walked down the hallway. On the walls there were paintings of cartoon animals, a bear with one eye missing, a rabbit peeling off the plaster. And then I saw the nursery. It was a large room with a glass viewing window. Or, it used to have glass. Now the window was blown out. The shards were scattered outward into the hallway, crunching under my boots. Whatever happened in that room, the explosion came from the inside. I stepped through the broken window frame. The cribs were overturned, melted plastic mattresses, blackened metal frames. But it was the far wall that stopped my heart. You know those photos from Hiroshima, where the flash of the bomb was so bright it burned people's shadows permanently onto the concrete? There were 3 shadows on the back wall of the nursery, 3 distinct silhouettes of nurses. One was reaching out. One was covering her face. One was turning to run. They were scorched into the paint, negative images in a sea of soot. I walked closer, my glowing hand trembling. In the center of the room, right where the blast would have originated, there was one single crib. It wasn't overturned. It was bolted to the floor, and it wasn't made of standard hospital metal. It looked like lead, thick, heavy industrial lead. I looked at the foot of the crib. There was a metal chart holder, still attached. I wiped away 20 years of soot with my thumb. Patient, Project 89. Mother, unknown. Father, unknown. Status, unstable. I stared at the lead crib. My crib. This is where I killed them. This is where I burned 3 women into the wall just because I was born. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, sizzling as it hit my glowing skin. I'm not a person. I'm a bomb. Suddenly, I heard it. Not a rat. Not the wind. Footsteps. Distinct, heavy boot steps, crunching on the glass in the hallway. Coming from the stairwell I just left. I killed my light instantly. The room plunged into pitch blackness. I crouched behind the lead crib, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Sweep the floor, a man's voice whispered. It was distorted, like he was speaking through a radio or a mask. The sensors picked up an energy spike. She's here. They found me. I gripped the pocket knife in my pocket. It felt like a toothpick against men with sensors. I looked at the shadows on the wall, the nurses I killed. Please, I thought, if I really am a monster, let me be a monster now. You know that fight or flight response they teach you about in biology class? They forget the third option. Freeze. I was frozen behind that lead crib like a statue. My knees were pulled up to my chest, my hands clamped over my mouth. Through the gaps in the metal slats of the crib, I saw the beams of their flashlights cutting through the darkness. 3 of them. They weren't wearing police uniforms. They were wearing all black. Tactical vests, helmets, gas masks. No badges, no names. These were the cleaners. The people Genesis Corp calls when a spilled beaker tries to run away. Check the corners, the lead guy commanded. His voice was calm, bored even. Remember, she's a Class 5 biohazard. Do not engage physically. Taser only. Class 5 biohazard. That's what I am to them. Not a girl. A spill. My heart was beating so fast it hurt. And with every beat, the pressure under my skin ratcheted up. The static in the air was getting louder. My hair was floating around my face, defying gravity. The flashlight beam swept over the lead crib. It paused. I've got movement, one of the guards said. Behind the containment unit. He started walking toward me. Crunch. 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 I looked at my hands. They were trembling, and sparks were jumping between my fingers like tiny blue lightning bolts. I couldn't hold it in. If I didn't let it out, I was going to explode. The guard rounded the corner of the crib. I looked up. I saw the green lenses of his night vision goggles. I saw the barrel of the taser rifle pointed right at my chest. Target acquired, he said into his radio. Take the He didn't finish the sentence. I didn't think. I didn't aim. I just screamed and shoved my hands forward. Boom. It wasn't like the static on the doorknob. This was a thunderclap. A massive arc of white-hot electricity shot out of my palms. It hit the guard square in the chest. He flew backward like he'd been hit by a truck. He smashed into the wall 10 feet away and slid down, twitching. His radio was screeching, a high-pitched feedback loop that pierced my ears. The other 2 guards spun around, shouting, "Man down! Man down! Open fire!" I scrambled to my feet. The room smelled like ozone and burnt rubber. They started shooting. I heard the zap, zap, zap of taser probes hitting the metal crib. I ran. Not toward the door. They were blocking it. I ran toward the shattered viewing window on the far side. I vaulted through the frame, landing in the main hallway. "She's in the corridor. Flank her." I sprinted down the dark hall. My glowing hands were like beacons, giving away my position, but I couldn't turn them off. I was a lighthouse in a blackout. I turned the corner and hit a dead end. A linen closet. No. I heard their boots pounding on the floor behind me. They were close. I yanked the closet door open. Empty metal shelves. Towels long gone. But on the back wall, near the floor, there was a small, square metal hatch. Laundry chute. It was tiny, maybe 18 inches wide, and it went straight down. "There she is!" a voice yelled. A flashlight beam hit me, blinding me. I didn't hesitate. I threw myself onto the floor and kicked the hatch open. It smelled like mildew and rot. I shoved my backpack in first, then wiggle-wormed my shoulders into the hole. "Grab her legs." I felt a gloved hand grab my ankle. He squeezed hard, trying to drag me back out. I kicked hard, and I let the electricity flow into my foot. Zzt! The guard yelped and let go. I slid forward. Gravity took over. I plummeted into the dark. It wasn't a smooth slide. It was a metal tube, spiraling down through the guts of the building. I banged my elbows, my knees, my head. I was screaming, but the sound was swallowed by the chute. I fell for what felt like forever. 4th floor? 3rd? 2nd? 1st. Then the chute leveled out. I shot out of the end like a cannonball. I landed on a pile of something soft and damp. It cushioned my fall, but the smell, oh God, the smell made me gag instantly. I rolled off the pile and turned on my flashlight. I wasn't in the laundry room. I was in the basement, and the pile I landed on wasn't laundry. It was biohazard bags. Hundreds of them, piled up in a mountain under the chute. Some were ripped open. I shone the light around. The room was massive. Concrete walls, drains in the floor, and along the walls, huge steel drawers. This wasn't the laundry. This was the morgue. And judging by the fresh padlock on the double doors, I wasn't the only thing down here. I heard a mechanical whirring sound coming from the next room, like a freezer compressor kicking on, or a ventilation fan. I stood up, wiping the slime off my coveralls. My ankle throbbed where the guard grabbed me, but the pain was already fading. I'm in the basement of St. Mary's, the place where they put the mistakes. And if I don't find a way out, I'm going to end up in one of those drawers. You know that scene in every horror movie where the girl walks toward the scary noise instead of running away? I always yelled at the screen, calling her an idiot. Well, turns out I'm the idiot. I stood in that freezing cold morgue, ankle deep in trash bags, listening to that mechanical whir-clunk coming from the next room. The air down here was different. It didn't smell like the rot in the chute. It smelled like chemicals. Sharp, stinging formaldehyde, the kind they used to pickle frogs in biology class. I stepped over the pile of bags. My boot caught on one, ripping the plastic. I looked down. I expected to see medical waste. Used gauze, syringes, maybe some bloody sheets, but the rip in the bag revealed something else. It was skin, pale, gray, rubbery skin, and a hand, a tiny, malformed hand with 6 fingers. I stumbled back, gagging. I shone my flashlight around the room. There were hundreds of these bags, piled up like firewood. These weren't trash. These were the prototypes, the ones that didn't work, the ones that Dr. Eris and my mother disposed of over the last 20 years. I wasn't the first. I was just the survivor. I forced myself to keep moving. I couldn't stay there looking at them. If I thought about it too long, I'd lose my mind. I followed the whirring sound to a heavy steel door marked cryogenics. The padlock on this one was broken, rusted through. I pushed it open. The room was small, lined with stainless steel drawers from floor to ceiling. But unlike the main morgue, this room was freezing. I could see my breath puffing out in white clouds. In the center of the room, there was a portable generator chugging away. It was hooked up to a single bank of drawers on the far wall. Someone was keeping this section alive. I walked over to the humming unit. There was a label on the drawer, handwritten in Sharpie. Genesis Project. Master Samples. My hand was shaking so bad I could barely grip the handle. I pulled it open. It wasn't a body inside. It was racks of vials. Hundreds of them. filled with glowing blue liquid, and next to the vials there was a tape recorder, an old-school cassette player. I pressed play. The voice that crackled out wasn't Dr. Eris. It was a woman's voice. Cold, clinical. Log entry 405. Subject 89 has reached adolescence. The memory dampeners are holding, but the bioelectric output is increasing. We are seeing spikes during REM sleep. Dr. Eris suggests termination, but I overruled him. She is the key to the sequence. If she survives the awakening, her bone marrow could cure everything from cancer to old age. We just need to harvest it before she goes supernova. I clicked the tape off. Harvest my bone marrow. That's why they kept me. That's why they hid me in the suburbs. I'm not a daughter. I'm a farm animal. And I'm finally fat enough for the slaughter. Suddenly, the generator sputtered. The lights on the freezer drawer flickered. And then, I heard a new sound. Ding. The elevator at the end of the hall. The one that was supposed to be broken. The gears groaned. The heavy doors slid open. I heard boots hitting the concrete floor. A lot of them. Sweep the basement, the voice from the radio said. If you find her, aim for the legs. We need the marrow intact. I looked at the vials of blue liquid. The master samples. If this is what they want, if this is what they killed all those babies for. I grabbed a metal tray from the counter. I'm not going to let them have it. I raised the tray and smashed it down onto the vials. Glass shattered. Blue liquid sprayed everywhere, hissing as it hit the floor. Hey! A voice shouted from the doorway. She's destroying the samples! Stop her! I spun around. 2 cleaners were standing there, raising their rifles. I looked at the generator. It was chugging hard, leaking gas fumes. I looked at my glowing hand. Dr. Eris said I was a bomb? Okay. Let's see what happens when you light a match in a gas leak. Have you ever been inside a thunderclap? Not hearing it from your porch while you drink iced tea? I mean standing inside the cloud when the lightning strikes. It's not a sound. It's a punch. A physical blow that rattles your teeth in your skull. I didn't throw a lightning bolt at the guards. That's comic book stuff. All I did was reach out and touch the exposed wire of that leaking generator. I let the static inside me jump the gap. Crack. The room turned orange, then white, then black. The force of the explosion threw me backward. I hit the stainless steel cabinets hard, sliding down to the floor. My ears were ringing, a high, piercing scream that drowned out everything else. I shook my head, trying to clear the stars from my vision. The room was on fire, but it wasn't a normal fire. That blue liquid, the master samples. It was flammable. It burned with a weird chemical violet flame that hissed like a snake. The 2 cleaners were gone. Or at least they weren't standing anymore. One was groaning on the floor, his tactical vest smoking. The other was buried under a pile of fallen ceiling tiles. I stood up. My knees felt like jelly. I coughed, tasting acrid smoke and gasoline. I should have been horrified. I just blew up a room. I probably just killed 2 men. But as I looked at the fire dancing on the walls, I didn't feel guilty. I felt light. The pressure under my skin was gone. The constant buzzing in my veins had stopped. I felt quiet, peaceful, like I had finally exhaled after holding my breath for 17 years. Move, Sarah. Move. The survival instinct kicked back in. I grabbed my backpack from the corner where I'd dropped it. The fire was spreading fast, eating up the old drywall. I couldn't go back up the laundry chute. I couldn't use the elevator. I saw a heavy iron door on the far wall. Maintenance stairwell. I ran for it. The handle was hot to the touch. I used my sleeve to turn it and shoved it open. Cool, damp air hit my face. I started climbing, up and up. My boots clanged on the metal grate steps. I burst out onto the ground floor, into a side hallway near the kitchen. The fire alarm was finally blaring now. A rhythmic whoop, whoop, whoop that echoed through the empty hospital. I ran toward the exit, the side door that led to the loading dock. I kicked the crash bar and stumbled out into the night air. I fell onto the grass, gasping, sucking in greedy lungfuls of oxygen. I looked back at the hospital. Smoke was pouring out of the basement vents, thick and black against the moon. I did it. I destroyed the samples. I destroyed the proof. But then, I saw the lights, blue and red, flashing silently in the distance. Not one police car, dozens. They were swarming the main entrance on the other side of the building, and overhead, the thwup 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 of a helicopter. A spotlight cut through the darkness, sweeping the grounds. It missed me by inches. I scrambled into the tall weeds, pressing my face into the dirt. They weren't just cleaners. This was a private army. Genesis Corp wasn't trying to hide this anymore. They were declaring war. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I froze. I thought I turned it off. I pulled it out. The screen was cracked, but it was lit up. A text message from an unknown number. Nice fireworks, kid, but you missed one sample. If you want to know where the backup is, stop running and look north. I stared at the screen. I missed one. I looked north, toward the city skyline glowing in the distance. I wasn't done. The nightmare wasn't over. I had just burned down the warehouse, but the factory was still open for business. I shoved the phone in my pocket and started crawling through the weeds toward the woods. I'm not Sarah Jenkins anymore. Sarah Jenkins died in that basement. The thing that crawled out of the fire. She's something else entirely. You think adrenaline is a super drug? Try fear. Fear will make you run 3 miles through a muddy drainage ditch in the middle of the night and not feel a thing. I came out of the woods near an old strip mall on the edge of the highway. My lungs were burning, and my legs felt like lead. The high from the explosion was gone. Now came the crash, and it hit me hard. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't make a fist. My stomach was cramping, screaming for food. That blast didn't just use electricity, it used me. It burned through my calorie reserves like a car running on nitrous. If I didn't eat something in the next hour, I was going to pass out in a ditch. I scanned the strip mall. Nail salon. Closed. Insurance office. Closed. But at the end of the row, a neon sign buzzed. 24-hour laundromat and vending. It wasn't a 5-star hotel, but it was warm, and it had food. I pulled my hood up to cover my face. I looked like a disaster, covered in soot, mud, and dried blue slime. But in a neighborhood like this, at 2 a.m, looking like a disaster just helps you blend in. I pushed the glass door open. The bell jingled. The place smelled like fabric softener and stale cigarettes. There was only one other person there, an old guy sleeping in a plastic chair, hugging a laundry basket. He didn't even look up. I went straight to the bathroom. I splashed cold water on my face, scrubbing away the black soot. I looked in the mirror. My eyes were bloodshot. My skin was pale, almost translucent. I looked sick. Not flu sick. Dying sick. I needed calories. I went to the vending machine. I put in my crumbled dollar bills, the ones I stole from my savings jar, honey buns, peanut butter crackers, a bottle of high-sugar soda. I ate them standing right there. I didn't even chew. I just inhaled them. I could feel the sugar hitting my bloodstream, settling the tremors in my hands. The static in my veins started to hum again, low and steady, recharging. Then, I looked up at the TV mounted in the corner. It was tuned to the local news channel. Breaking news. The headline screamed in red letters, "Chemical plant explosion at Old St. Mary's Hospital." They were showing aerial footage from the helicopter. The hospital was surrounded by fire trucks. Smoke was billowing out. The anchor woman was speaking in that serious, tragic voice. Authorities are reporting a massive gas leak in the basement of the abandoned facility. 2 security contractors are in critical condition. Police are searching for a suspect seen fleeing the scene. Then, my picture popped up on the screen. It wasn't the security cam footage from the nursery. It was my school picture, the one from last year. Me, smiling, wearing a blue sweater, looking totally normal. Police are looking for 17-year-old Sarah Jenkins. She was reported missing by her mother earlier this evening. Authorities believe she may be disoriented and suffering from a psychotic break. She is considered a danger to herself and others. A psychotic break. That was the story. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't a witness. I was a crazy teenage girl who set a fire. They were controlling the narrative. My mother, Dr. Eris, Genesis Corp. They were turning me into the villain so that if the police shot me, nobody would ask questions. I watched the screen. They showed a clip of my mother. She was standing on our front lawn, crying into a microphone. "Please," she sobbed, looking right into the camera. "Sarah, if you can hear this, come home. You're sick, honey. You need your medication. We just want to help you." It was an Oscar-worthy performance. The old man in the chair snored loudly, startling me. I looked at the TV, then at the glass door. They had my face on every screen in the state. I couldn't hitchhike. I couldn't take a bus. I stick out like a sore thumb. I needed a disguise. I looked at the old man's laundry basket. Sitting right on top was an oversized flannel shirt and a beaten-up baseball cap. I'm sorry, mister. Really. I grabbed the shirt and the hat. I left a $10 bill on his lap as payment. I walked out of the laundromat, pulling the cap low over my eyes. The text message said to look north, to the city. If I wanted to survive, I had to stop being Sarah Jenkins. Sarah Jenkins was a crazy girl on the news. I needed to be a ghost. I headed for the train tracks behind the strip mall. Freight trains don't check IDs, and they don't watch the news. Next stop, New York City. You ever try to catch a train that's moving 30 miles an hour? It's not like the movies. You don't gracefully hop on while waving goodbye. You throw yourself at a moving wall of steel and pray you don't get sliced in half by the wheels. I lay in the tall grass near the tracks, waiting. The ground rumbled beneath my chest long before I saw the headlight. It was a deep, rhythmic vibration that felt like the earth's heartbeat. When the locomotive passed, the noise was deafening. A wall of wind and diesel fumes hit me. I waited for the engines to pass, counting the cars. 1, 2, 3, flatbed, tanker, boxcar. The boxcar door was open about a foot, a black rectangle of nothingness. I didn't think. I just sprinted. I ran alongside the gravel track, my boots slipping on the loose stones. The train was loud, clanking and screeching, a metal monster tearing through the night. I reached out for the rusty ladder on the side. My hand grabbed the cold iron. Zap. A spark flew, but I held on. I yanked myself up, swinging my legs over the gap. For a second, I was dangling over the wheels, churning steel blades that would turn me into paste in a second. I swung my body and threw myself into the dark opening of the car. I landed hard on wood that smelled like old hay and sawdust. I rolled until I hit the back wall and lay there, gasping for air. I was safe, or as safe as a fugitive can be. The train picked up speed. The rhythmic clack, 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 clack of the wheels became hypnotic. It was freezing in there. The wind whipped through the open door. I pulled the stolen flannel shirt tight around me, curling into a ball. But then, something weird happened. I didn't stay cold. I felt that hum start up in my chest again. The generator. My veins started to warm up, radiating heat like I had swallowed a cup of hot coffee. The bioelectricity wasn't just a weapon. It was a heater. My body was regulating its own temperature, burning calories to keep me from freezing to death. I looked at my arm in the darkness. The bruise where I fell was already yellow, fading fast. I pulled up my sleeve to look at the inside of my elbow, the spot where Dr. Eris and my mother had stuck me with needles 1,000 times. The scar tissue was gone. The skin was smooth, perfect, unblemished. It made me want to cry, not because I was healed, but because it erased the only history I had. Every scar tells a story, right? Well, my body was erasing my stories. It was resetting me to factory settings. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to sleep. I was afraid of what I'd see when I did, but exhaustion pulled me under. I dreamed of the nursery, the one with the lead crib. But in the dream, the nurses weren't shadows on the wall. They were standing over me, and they weren't screaming. They were chanting, "Harvest, harvest, harvest." I woke up with a start. The train was slowing down. Sunlight was streaming through the open door. Dusty, gray sunlight. I crawled to the edge of the car and looked out. We weren't in the suburbs anymore. To the left, endless rows of rusty shipping containers. To the right, a gray river that looked like liquid concrete. And ahead, the skyline. New York City. It rose out of the smog like a fortress. Towers of glass and steel piercing the sky. It looked beautiful, and it looked dangerous. I pulled the notebook out of my pocket. Genesis Corp 405, Lexington Avenue, the Chrysler Building. I could see the spire from here, glinting in the morning sun. That's where the board of directors sits. That's where the people who ordered the harvest are drinking their morning coffee, probably reading a report about a gas leak at an old hospital. They think I'm dead, or running. They don't know I'm riding a freight train into their backyard. The train screeched, metal grinding on metal, coming to a halt in a rail yard. I grabbed my backpack. I adjusted my stolen baseball cap. I checked my hands. No glow, just flesh and bone. Time to blend in. I jumped out of the car, my boots hitting the gravel of the Bronx rail yard. New York, New York. If I can make it here, I can kill anyone anywhere. You know how dogs hear dog whistles that humans can't? High-pitched frequencies that drive them crazy? Imagine that. But instead of sound, it's electricity. And instead of a whistle, it's 8 million people running microwaves, charging iPhones, and riding electric subway trains all at once. New York City wasn't just loud, it was screaming at me. As soon as I stepped out of the rail yard and onto the streets of the Bronx, I felt it. The air was thick with static. It tickled the back of my neck. It made my teeth ache. I pulled my baseball cap down low and kept walking. I needed to get to Midtown, to the Chrysler Building. I walked into a subway station, the Hunts Point stop. I didn't have a Metro card, but I didn't need one. I walked up to the turnstile. I placed my hand on the metal scanner where you're supposed to swipe the card. Zzzt. A tiny pulse. The machine beeped. Go. I pushed through. Standing on the platform, waiting for the 6 train, was torture. I looked down at the tracks. There are 3 rails, 2 for the wheels, and 1, the 3rd rail, that carries 600 volts of direct current. It was humming. I could hear it over the chatter of the commuters. It was a low, throbbing bass note that vibrated in my boots. It looked delicious. That's a sick thought, right? Seeing a lethal electrical rail and wanting to touch it? But my body was running on empty after the explosion. That rail was an all-you-can-eat buffet. I had to shove my hands in my pockets to keep from jumping down there. Not now, Sarah. Don't make a scene. The train screeched into the station. I squeezed into a car packed with people. Nobody looked at me. That's the beauty of New York. You can be a dirty, fugitive teenage bioweapon, and the guy next to you is too busy playing Candy Crush to notice. We rattled underground. The lights in the car flickered in time with my heartbeat. Every time the train accelerated, I felt the surge of power running through the floor. It was feeding me, just a little bit, keeping me awake. 30 minutes later, I got off at Grand Central Terminal. I walked up the stairs and into the main concourse. It was huge. The ceiling was painted like the night sky, with constellations. But I wasn't looking at the stars. I was looking for the exit to Lexington Avenue. I stepped out onto the street, and there it was, 405 Lexington Avenue, the Chrysler Building. It's an Art Deco masterpiece. Stainless steel gargoyles, a spire that pierces the clouds. It's supposed to be a symbol of American progress, but to me, looking up at it from the sidewalk, it looked like a syringe pointing at the sky. I crossed the street, dodging a yellow taxi that honked at me. I stood outside the revolving doors. Men and women in expensive suits were streaming in and out. They looked important. They held coffees and briefcases. They swiped security badges to get past the glass barriers in the lobby. I pressed my face against the glass, looking for a directory. And there it was, etched in gold on the marble wall behind the security desk. Genesis Corp., floors 60-75, executive offices, penthouse. They were at the top of the food chain, literally. I watched a woman walk in. She was wearing a lab coat over a dress, carrying a takeout salad. She tapped her badge on the turnstile. Beep. Green light. She walked to the elevator bank marked, Genesis personnel only. I looked at my reflection in the glass door. Dirty flannel shirt. Grease stains. Baggy eyes. I can't just blast my way in. Not here. There are too many cameras. Too many witnesses. If I start throwing lightning bolts in Midtown Manhattan, the National Guard will be here in 10 minutes. I need a key. I watched the woman in the lab coat get into the elevator. I need her key. I stepped back into the shadows of the building. My stomach growled, but the hunger for food was gone. It was replaced by the hunger for answers. I'm going to wait. I'm going to watch. And the next person with a Genesis badge who walks out that door for a smoke break? You know what the hardest part of being a spy is? It's not the fighting. It's not the hacking. It's the waiting. I stood in the shadow of a scaffolding tunnel on 43rd Street for 3 hours. I watched the revolving doors of the Chrysler Building spin like a roulette wheel. Suits came out. Suits went in. Tourists took selfies. My legs were cramping. My stomach was eating itself. But I didn't move. I was a hunter in a concrete blind. Finally, at 5:15 p.m., I saw him. He looked like the perfect target. Young, maybe 25. Cheap suit. He looked stressed, tapping furiously on his phone as he pushed through the doors. And most importantly, he had a pack of cigarettes in his hand. He He didn't walk toward the subway. He walked around the corner, heading for a narrow service alley between the Chrysler Building and the hotel next door, the universal designated smoking area for stressed-out corporate drones. I pulled my baseball cap down and followed him. The alley was dark, smelling of garbage juice and exhaust fumes. He was standing near a dumpster, trying to light a cigarette with shaking hands. The wind kept blowing his lighter out. Flick, curse, flick, curse. I walked up behind him. Quiet. My boots made no sound on the wet pavement. Need a light? I asked. He jumped about a foot in the air. He spun around, dropping his lighter. Jesus! He gasped, clutching his chest. You scared the hell out of me, kid. He looked me up and down, saw the dirty flannel, the grease stains. He sneered. Spare change? He asked, dismissive. I don't carry cash. Beat it. He turned back around to pick up his lighter. I reached out. I didn't touch him. I just touched the tip of his unlit cigarette. I let a tiny spark jump from my finger. Snap. The cigarette flared to life, burning bright orange. He froze. He stared at the cigarette, then slowly turned back to look at me. His eyes went wide. How did you... I stepped into the light. I took off my cap. I let him see my face, the face that was on every TV screen in the city. You're her, he whispered. The girl from the news. The gas leak girl. I'm not a gas leak, I said. My voice was steady, cold. I'm the explosion. I raised my hand. I let the veins glow. Not blinding white this time. Just a low, threatening blue hum. I held it inches from his face. I could see the sweat beading on his forehead, reflecting the light. I need your badge, I said, and your elevator code. He started shaking. You can't go up there, he stammered. The building is on lockdown. Level 4 security. They know you're in the city. Give me the badge. Lady, please, he begged, backing up until he hit the dumpster. If I give it to you, they'll fire me. Or worse. If you don't give it to me, I said, leaning in, I will stop your heart. It takes 300 joules to restart a human heart. Do you know how many I have in this hand right now? I didn't actually know, but he believed me. He fumbled with his lanyard. He unclipped the plastic card. The code is 8912, he whispered, dropping the badge into my glowing hand. But you're making a mistake. It's not just offices up there anymore. They moved the lab equipment in this morning. They're waiting for something. I gripped the badge. They moved the lab equipment. They aren't waiting for something, I told him. They're waiting for me. I grabbed his shoulder. Just a squeeze. I sent a little jolt through his cheap suit, enough to knock the wind out of him, but not enough to kill him. He slumped to the ground, gasping, eyes rolling back in his head. He'd have a hell of a headache when he woke up, but he'd live. I took his pack of cigarettes. I don't smoke, but hey, I earned a souvenir. I walked back out to the street. I looked at the badge. Kevin Miller, junior analyst. Sorry, Kevin. You just got promoted to accomplice. I looked up at the spire of the Chrysler Building piercing the clouds. Floor 75, the penthouse. I have the key. I have the power. And now, I have the element of surprise. I'm coming up, Mother. And I hope you're wearing rubber soles. You know that saying, fake it till you make it? Well, I was faking it so hard I thought I was going to have a stroke right there in the lobby. I walked through the revolving doors of the Chrysler Building like I owned the place. I kept my head down, staring at my phone like every other overworked analyst in the city. The lobby is like a cathedral of capitalism. Red Moroccan marble walls, amber lights, Art Deco patterns everywhere. It smells like money and lemon floor polish. I walked up to the security turnstiles. There were 2 guards standing there, arms crossed, watching the flow of people. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Thump, 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 thump. I held up Kevin's badge. I held my breath. Beep. The little light turned green. The barrier slid open. I didn't exhale. I just kept walking. Past the guards, past the reception desk, straight to the elevator bank marked Genesis Corp. Private access. I stepped inside the brass elevator car. It was empty. Thank God. I looked at the keypad. There were no buttons for floors 60 through 75, just a digital number pad. I punched in the code Kevin gave me. 8912. The panel lit up blue. Access granted. The door slid shut, sealing me in. And then, I felt it. As soon as the car started moving up, the gravity hit me. My stomach dropped to my shoes. But it wasn't just gravity. It was the static. Floor 10, floor 20, floor 30. The higher we went, the louder the hum became. It was vibrating in the walls of the elevator. It was vibrating in my teeth. Kevin said they moved lab equipment into the penthouse this morning. He didn't say what kind, but I could feel it. It felt like the fence at the hospital, but 1,000 times stronger. Floor 50, floor 60. I looked at my reflection in the brass doors. The flannel shirt was gone. The baseball cap was gone. All I saw was a girl with glowing white veins spiderwebbing up her neck. My eyes were shifting. The brown was melting away, replaced by that burning electric gold. I wasn't sneaking in anymore. I was charging up. The elevator slowed down. Floor 74, floor 75. Ding. The doors didn't open immediately. There was a pause, a mechanical clunk as the locking mechanism disengaged. I clenched my fists. Sparks showered onto the elevator floor. I don't know who is waiting for me on the other side of these doors. My mother? Dr. Eris? A SWAT team? It doesn't matter. I'm not the asset they lost. I'm the Trojan horse they just let in, and I'm about to burn this whole city down to get the truth. The doors started to slide open. Showtime. Listen, if you are not subscribed to this channel yet, you need to hit that button right now. Seriously, do it, because the elevator doors are opening, and what I'm about to see on the 75th floor isn't just a twist. It's the answer to the mystery I've been chasing for 20 chapters. You do not want to be left in the lobby when the war starts. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and get ready, because the next confession, it's going to be electric. You expect a SWAT team, right? You expect guys rappelling from the ceiling, red laser dots on your chest, tear gas canisters rolling across the floor. That's what I expected when those elevator doors slid open. I had my hands raised, fingers glowing, ready to turn the 75th floor into a lightning storm. But there were no guns. There were no guards. There was just a cocktail party. I stepped out onto a plush white carpet. The room was massive, floor-to-ceiling glass walls looking out over the entire glittering expanse of Manhattan. There was soft jazz playing from hidden speakers. Waiters in white tuxedos were circulating with trays of champagne. And standing in the center of the room, holding a crystal flute, was my mother. She wasn't wearing her soccer mom cardigan. She was wearing a black evening gown that looked like it cost more than my college tuition. Her hair was slicked back. She looked sharp, dangerous. She saw me. The room went dead silent. The jazz stopped. The dozen or so people in the room, men in expensive suits, women in diamonds, turned to look at me. They didn't look terrified. They looked hungry, like diners watching a steak being brought to the table. "Sarah," my mother said. Her voice was calm, welcoming. "You're late, darling. We were just about to start the toast." I stood there, covered in soot, grease, and sweat, my flannel shirt torn. I looked like a feral animal that had wandered into the Met Gala. "Cut the crap, Mom," I snarled. My voice echoed in the cavernous room. "Where is he? Where is Dr. Eris?" "He's in the lab," she said, taking a sip of champagne. "Preparing the extraction unit. We knew you'd come. The homing instinct in your genetics is quite strong. We knew you'd come." My blood ran cold. "I'm not here to come home," I said, stepping off the carpet onto the polished marble floor. "I'm here to finish this." I raised my hands. I pushed all that rage, all that fear, all that electricity into my palms. I aimed right at the crystal chandelier above her head. "Burn it down." I released the blast, but nothing happened. There was no thunderclap, no lightning bolt, just a weak, pathetic spark that fizzled out before it traveled 2 inches. I stared at my hands. The glow was gone. My veins looked dark, dead. I tried again. I strained every muscle, trying to pull the power from the air, from the lights, from the static. Nothing. It felt like trying to breathe underwater. My mother smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Copper," she said softly, tapping her high heel on the floor. "And graphene. The entire floor of this penthouse is a conductive grid. The walls are shielded. You're standing inside the world's most expensive Faraday cage, sweetie." She walked toward me. I tried to back up, but my legs felt heavy, drained. The floor wasn't just blocking my power, it was sucking it out of me, like a vampire bat attached to my feet. "You didn't break in," she whispered, stopping inches from my face. She reached out and tucked a strand of dirty hair behind my ear. "We invited you in. We needed you fully charged. All that running, all that anger, the explosion in the basement, it just spiked your voltage. You're not a weapon, Sarah. You're a battery. And you just delivered yourself to the charger. I tried to punch her. I really did. But my knees buckled. I slumped to the floor, my vision swimming. The people in the room, the board of directors, started to clap. A polite golf course applause. "Bravo, Eleanor," an old man in a tuxedo said, raising his glass. "The asset is secured." My mother looked down at me. She didn't look like my mom anymore. She looked like a scientist looking at a lab rat. "Take her to the chair," she commanded. 2 waiters dropped their trays. They weren't waiters. They grabbed me by the arms and dragged me across the marble floor. I tried to fight, but I was empty. The room had eaten everything I had. They dragged me toward a set of double doors at the back of the room. As they opened them, I saw the lab equipment Kevin told me about. It wasn't a microscope. It was a chair, a metal chair with restraints and a massive humming copper coil suspended above it. Dr. Aris was standing next to it, adjusting a dial. He looked up and smiled. "Right on time," he said. I screamed, but the sound didn't come out. The darkness was closing in. I walked into the lion's den wearing a meat suit, and now it was feeding time. You know what it feels like to be hollowed out? Not emotionally, physically, like someone put a straw in your chest and is slowly sucking the life out of you, drop by drop. I was strapped to the chair, heavy leather belts across my chest, my wrists, my ankles. A metal halo was lowered onto my head, pressing cold contacts against my temples. The board of directors stood behind a wall of safety glass, sipping their champagne, watching. To them, this wasn't torture. It was a harvest festival. My mother stood next to Dr. Aris at the control console. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the monitors. "Vitals are stable," she said. Her voice was flat, professional. "Begin the transfer." Dr. Aris turned a dial. Whirr. The copper coil above my head started to spin. A low, magnetic thrum filled the room. At first, it just tickled. A little static on my skin. Then, it started to pull. It felt like fishing hooks snagging every nerve ending in my body and yanking them upward. My back arched off the chair. I tried to scream, but my jaw was clamped shut by the electricity coursing through my muscles. I saw the tubes running from the chair to a bank of empty canisters on the wall. They started to fill, blue liquid, glowing, swirling, iridescent blue. It wasn't just electricity. They were taking the chimera fluid, my blood, my marrow, the stuff that healed my broken leg in 10 seconds, the stuff that made me immortal. "Flow rate is at 20%, Dr. Aris announced. "Purity is 100%. This is vintage, Eleanor. The stress conditioning worked." I looked at the glass wall. The old man in the tuxedo, the chairman, was smiling. He looked frail, sick. He was looking at those canisters like they were the fountain of youth. And that's when I understood. This wasn't about curing cancer. This wasn't about saving humanity. It was about them. They wanted to live forever. They wanted to buy another 50 years of power, paid for with my life. The pain ratcheted up. My vision started to tunnel. I could feel my memories slipping. The train ride, the hospital, my name. It was all getting fuzzy, sucked away into the machine. I'm dying, I thought. This is it. I'm going to end up as a smoothie for a billionaire. "Increase to 40%, my mother ordered. "Eleanor, that's risky," Aris warned. "Her heart rate is spiking." "Do it," she snapped. "We need the full batch before the authorities get a warrant for the building." The hum got louder. The pain became blinding white. But then, something strange happened. As the machine pulled harder, I felt a shift. Not in me, in the building. I could feel the current running through the copper wires. I could feel the electricity flowing from the wall outlet into the console. I could feel the elevator motors 50 floors down. The Faraday cage was designed to keep my power in. But this chair connected me to the grid. They plugged me in. They thought I was a AA battery. They didn't realize I was a conduit. I stopped fighting the pull. I stopped trying to hold on to my energy. Instead, I reached out with my mind. I followed the wire. I felt the pulse of the Chrysler building, the HVAC systems, the security locks, the servers, the lights. It was all connected. And now, so was I. My vision cleared. The pain faded into the background, replaced by a roar of data and power. I looked at Dr. Eris. I forced my head to lift, fighting the restraints. He saw my eyes. They weren't just gold anymore. They were blinding, like looking into the sun. "Doctor," I rasped. My voice sounded distorted, electronic. "Check the voltage." He frowned. He looked down at his console. His eyes went wide. "Wait," he stammered. "Why is the input rising? We're supposed to be extracting." "It's not extracting," I whispered. "It's looping." The lights in the penthouse flickered. The jazz music over the speakers distorted into a demonic screech. "Shut it down," my mother yelled, reaching for the emergency stop. "I can't," Eris screamed, smashing buttons. "The system is locked out. She's overwriting the code." I wasn't writing code. I was just being what they made me. A chimera. An organism that adapts to survive. They introduced me to their network. So, I decided to become the admin. The canisters on the wall stopped filling. The blue liquid started to bubble. Reverse flow. "You wanted my power?" I yelled, my voice booming through every speaker in the building. "Take it! Take all of it!" I pushed. I didn't push lightning. I pushed a surge. A massive, concentrated spike of bioelectric chaos straight back into their grid. The console exploded. Dr. Eris flew backward, his lab coat on fire. The safety glass shattered. The board of directors started screaming as the lights blew out, plunging the room into darkness. The only light left was me, sitting in the chair, glowing like a supernova. The restraints melted off my wrists. I stood up. You know that saying, "Be careful what you wish for"? These people spent 20 years wishing for a god. They spent millions of dollars trying to bottle lightning. Well, they got their wish. And now, they look like they want a refund. I stood in the center of the ruined penthouse. The emergency lights were flickering, casting long, twitchy shadows. The wind was howling through the shattered windows, whipping my hair around my face. 75 floors up, the air is thin. It's cold. But I wasn't cold. I was a furnace. I stepped over the wreckage of the extraction chair. Dr. Eris was groaning on the floor, clutching his burnt hands. I didn't even look at him. He was the hired help. I wanted management. The board of directors, the 12 most powerful people in the city, were huddled in the corner like frightened sheep. The chairman, the old man in the tuxedo, stepped forward. His hands were shaking so bad he dropped his empty champagne glass. Smash. "Now, Sarah," he stammered, holding up his hands. Let's not be hasty. We can negotiate. You're clearly advanced. We can make you a partner, a shareholder." I laughed. It was a jagged, ugly sound. "A shareholder?" I asked. My voice crackled with static. "You tried to grind me up into medicine and now you want to offer me stock options?" I walked toward the wall of canisters. The blue liquid, my life force, was still bubbling inside them. The stuff they were going to inject into their veins to live forever. "This is what you want, right?" I asked. I placed my glowing hand on the glass of the first canister. "No!" the chairman screamed. "That's $1 trillion of inventory. Don't." I didn't listen. I pushed a pulse of heat into the glass. The blue liquid boiled instantly. It turned black. Then it evaporated into a cloud of foul-smelling steam. The canister shattered. I moved to the next one. Boil. Shatter. And the next. "Stop her!" A woman in a diamond necklace shrieked. "Security! Someone stop her!" But nobody moved. Because they knew if they touched me, they'd end up like the fence at the hospital. I destroyed every single drop. The floor was slick with black sludge. Their immortality was gone. It was just toxic waste now. I turned back to the room. The chairman was on his knees, weeping. He looked old. So incredibly old. The hope was gone from his eyes, and age came rushing back in to fill the void. I looked for my mother. She wasn't huddled with the others. She was standing by the broken window, gripping the frame. The wind was tearing at her expensive dress. I walked over to her. My bare feet left glowing footprints on the marble. She didn't back away. She looked at me with a mix of terror and pride. It was sickening. "I made you," she whispered over the roar of the wind. "You are magnificent." "You didn't make me," I said. "You stole me, and then you tortured me." "I saved you!" she yelled, her composure finally cracking. "Do you think you would have survived in the wild? You were a nuclear reactor in a diaper. I gave you a home. I gave you a life. You gave me a cage, I corrected. And you lied to me every single day. You aren't my mother, Eleanor. You're my warden. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the only thing I had left from my old life, the house key, the one to the front door of the nice brick house in the suburbs. I held it up. I let the heat build in my fingers. The metal turned red, then orange, then white. It melted into a drop of molten slag and dripped onto the floor. I'm moving out, I said. Sirens were wailing down below. Loud ones, fire trucks, police, probably the FBI by now. They're coming for you, my mother hissed. You can't escape. You're a monster. The world will hunt you down. I stepped up onto the ledge of the window. The wind hit me full force. I looked down at the grid of Manhattan, glowing like a circuit board. Let them come, I said. I'm not hiding in the dark anymore. I looked back at her one last time. And Mom, if you ever try to find me again, don't send Dr. Eris. Send an army. You're going to need it. I leaned back. Gravity took over. I fell backward out of the penthouse, plummeting toward the streets of New York City. I wasn't falling to my death. I was falling to my life. Here's the script for Chapter 19. Focus. The physics of the fall. The gruesome reality of extreme regeneration, body horror, and disappearing into the city to become a legend, ghost. You know what goes through your mind when you're falling 75 stories? It's not your life flashing before your eyes. It's math. I remember calculating the terminal velocity. I remember thinking about the pavement. I remember realizing that even with super healing, if my brain ended up spread across 42nd Street, there wouldn't be anything left to heal. But I didn't hit the street. The Chrysler Building isn't a straight drop. It has tiers, setbacks. I fell about 10 stories before I hit the first gargoyle. I didn't stick the landing. I smashed into a stainless steel eagle head at 100 miles an hour. I heard my ribs shatter. All of them. I heard my spine snap like a dry twig. I bounced off the metal and tumbled onto a gravel maintenance ledge 60 floors up. I laid there. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My chest was collapsed. My legs were twisted in directions legs aren't supposed to go. If I was human, I would have been dead before I stopped rolling. But then, the hum started. It wasn't the gentle buzz I felt on the train. It was a roar. My body went into emergency override. It hurt. God, it hurt more than the impact. I could feel my ribs snapping back into place, grinding against each other. I could feel the vertebrae in my neck realigning, pop by pop by pop. It felt like invisible hands were inside my skin, stitching me back together with hot wire. I screamed, but my lungs were still inflating, so it just came out as a wet gurgle. I lay on that ledge for 10 minutes, maybe 20, watching the police helicopters circle above the penthouse. They were looking for a body on the street. They didn't think to look on the roof. Finally, the pain dialed down to a dull throb. I sat up. I wiped the blood off my face. My flannel shirt was gone, shredded by the fall. I was shivering in the cold wind, half naked, covered in soot and blood. I looked at my reflection in the dark office window next to me. I didn't look like a girl anymore. I looked like a map of violence. Scars were forming and fading in seconds. My eyes were still glowing, a faint embers in a fire gold. I stood up. My legs held. I found a maintenance door on the roof. I broke the lock. Didn't even need to melt it. Just ripped it off with raw strength. I took the stairs down. 60 flights. By the time I hit the lobby level, I had stolen a janitor's jumpsuit from a supply closet. It was gray, baggy, and smelled like bleach. Perfect. I walked out the back service exit, right into the chaos of the alley. It was a war zone. Police cars, ambulances, news vans. The flashing lights were blinding. A cop ran right past me, shouting into his radio. "Perimeter breach. We have reports of an explosion in the penthouse." He didn't even look at me. He was looking for a supervillain. He wasn't looking for a limping janitor. I merged into the crowd of onlookers. People were filming with their phones, speculating, scared. "I heard it was a bomb," one guy said. "No, I saw lightning," a woman argued. "Blue lightning." I kept my head down. I kept walking. I walked until the sirens faded into the background noise of the city. I walked until my feet stopped hurting. I ended up in Central Park. It was late. The park was empty, save for the shadows. I sat on a bench near the reservoir. I looked at the water. It was black, calm. I reached into the pocket of the jumpsuit. I still had the house key, the melted lump of metal. I threw it into the water. Plop. It was gone. And so was Sarah Jenkins. I'm not a daughter. I'm not a patient. I'm not an experiment. I looked at the city skyline surrounding me. Millions of lights. Millions of people. And hidden among them, probably dozens of other Genesis Corp labs. Other hospitals. Other farms. My mother said the world would hunt me down. She was wrong. I'm the one doing the hunting. I laid down on the bench. For the first time in 17 years, I wasn't sleeping in a monitored bed. I wasn't being drugged. I wasn't being watched. I was cold. I was hungry. I was in pain. And I had never felt so alive. Here's the script for Chapter 20. Focus, the epilogue. Establishing the new status quo. The shift from victim to hunter. And setting up the future of the channel story. So that's the file. That's the truth about Sarah Jenkins. I'm recording this on a burner phone I bought at a bodega in Queens. As soon as I hit upload, I'm smashing this thing and dropping it into a storm drain. It's been 2 weeks since the fall. 2 weeks since I died and came back to life on a ledge in Midtown. I've been busy. I learned that when you stop existing on paper, the city opens up in a different way. I sleep in boiler rooms. I eat from cash-only delis. I work odd jobs, moving furniture, unloading trucks, anything that pays cash and doesn't ask for a social security number. My strength is fully back. Actually, it's stronger. I lifted a transmission out of a Ford truck yesterday with one hand. The mechanic thought he was seeing things. I just told him it was leverage. But I'm not just surviving. I'm working. I went back to the library. I didn't hack Genesis Corp. I'm not a computer genius. I just read the news. I looked for the patterns. Unexplained gas leaks. Sudden closures of pediatric wings. Miracle recoveries of billionaire CEOs. The map is bigger than I thought. St. Mary's was just one hatchery. The Chrysler Building was just one headquarters. Right now, I'm sitting across the street from a private fertility clinic on the Upper East Side. It looks fancy. Valet parking, marble columns. But I can hear it. Even from across the street, over the noise of the traffic, I can hear the hum. That low, buzzing frequency of high-voltage containment fields. And 5 minutes ago, I saw a black SUV pull up. A woman got out. She was holding the hand of a little boy, maybe 5 years old. The boy looked tired, pale. But when he touched the metal railing of the stairs, I saw it. A tiny, blue spark. His mother didn't notice. The doorman didn't notice. But I did. They're starting a new batch. I'm not going to let that happen. My mother told me I was a battery. She was wrong. I'm the short circuit. I'm going to finish this coffee. Then I'm going to walk across the street. I'm going to walk into that clinic, and I'm going to turn off the lights. Permanently. This isn't a confession anymore. It's a declaration of war. My name is Sarah. I'm Subject 89. And if you are listening to this, if you feel that hum under your skin, if you see lights flicker when you get angry, don't go to the doctor. Don't tell your parents. Find me. Narrator breaks character for the final call to action. And that is the end of Season 1. But Sarah's hunt is just beginning. If you want to see which facility she hits next, and if you want to know what happens to that little boy she just spotted, you need to subscribe right now. We are building a resistance here. Hit the like button to boost the signal, and tell me in the comments, do you think Sarah is the only one? Or are there others hiding in your city? Stay tuned. The blackout is coming.